We just have to remain ever vigilant against these threats and others for those who would seek to attack us and our way of life.
Janet Napolitano, Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, talking about the terrorism threat in America, but now she's very concerned about what she calls the cybersecurity threat. Good morning. Paul Lindman and Scott Lynn with you on the Morning Update. Earlier this morning, we had a chance to catch up with this cabinet-level official and ask her what she meant when she told a Senate committee last month that the cybersecurity threat is right in front of us.
What I'm talking about is the fact that the number and sophistication of attacks on our cyber networks just keeps growing. So when I'm asked what are the impending threats, what are the impending things we need to worry about, cyber is right at the top of the list.
Are you convinced personally that we can develop an effective, comprehensive cybersecurity system?
I am, and I think that's what we want the Congress to help us with. I think what we need is to clearly spell out the roles of the Defense Department, the Department of Homeland Security. I think we need to encourage information sharing, particularly where the nation's critical infrastructure is concerned, and we need to have some basic performance standards there to secure the networks.
There are those concerned with protecting privacy, confidentiality, and civil liberties. How do we balance all these concerns?
Actually, in the bill that's pending in the Senate, it's called the Lieberman-Collins bill, there are privacy and civil liberties sections of the bill built in. I mean, that's been really thought through very carefully. There's a House bill pending that is not very good on those issues, but from our standpoint, we really want to have those privacy issues built in from the get-go.
As you know, Madam Secretary, there are critics who say there is not the great need for federal regulation of privately owned networks that you might see, and they're skeptical of the cost as well. You would say what?
I would say, look, we're talking about basic performance standards, leaving the private sector to its own to figure out how to reach those standards. And we're only talking about the nation's core critical infrastructure, the infrastructure that small business relies on, households rely on. This is the basic core of our cyber network, and we need to bring up the performance there. We need to have better standards there.
We don't have to tell you that Homeland Security, based primarily on what we experience in our airports with people at that level, under constant criticism. And there are those that are saying it shouldn't go to Homeland Security at all. Any of this is too big.
First of all, cyber is already at Homeland Security. I think people don't realize that, for example, last year we responded at Homeland Security to over 106,000 cyber attacks. So we have built up the civilian capacity here. That's where it already exists. And with respect to the TSA, I just remind people that TSA is there to keep our aviation network safe in the face of a lot of ongoing threats against it.
Given what passengers have to go through these days, there are those who say now we should do better screening when it comes to flight crews, given the recent incidents. What's your response to that?
Actually, we're piloting a system for pilots and hope to expand it to flight crews as well, where we can expedite their screening. We have to do it carefully because every time we separate out a particular group, you can anticipate that group will be exploited by our adversaries. But we think with pilots who have the cockpit, who have that responsibility anyway, we should be able to expedite screening. We have pilots for the pilots already underway, and we're looking to expand to flight crews.
And finally, one more question on cybersecurity before we let you go, Madam Secretary. We asked you earlier about privacy and individual citizens, but what about corporate intrusion when it comes to protecting the nation? Are you concerned about that?
Well, we're concerned about the kinds of attacks into our corporate infrastructure and realize that 85% of our critical infrastructure is in private sector hands. That's why we work closely with the private sector even now, but that's why we recognize that we need to have some basic performance standards if we're really going to say we have a comprehensive cybersecurity plan in place.
Homeland Security Secretary Janet Napolitano, thanks for speaking to us in Portland again this morning.
Thank you.